Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Sakey speaking. Well, I was looking at the electoral law review today, and Chris Fafoe had asked for a review of the electoral rules, so debating on those electoral laws. And this is about extending the term in Parliament and reducing the age of voting in the general election. I don't know how that will go with the local elections, but this would be applied in the 2023 elections as coming general elections. Now, this has been rejected twice with bringing the age down to 16 in 1967 and in 1990. That was repealed by over 2/3 of the vote. With the levels of distrust in this non-transparent government, why on earth would you give them an extra year in Parliament? Because they want to extend the term of Parliament from 3 to 4 years. Now, this is in the review. So you've got National are opposed it, ACT are opposed it, but they said when it comes to the local elections, then they leave that up. He will leave it up to the MPs. So he's sitting on the fence there. You've got Labour and Green are for it. I don't know which way Maori Party are going as yet, but I will look at that. So this review stage was public consultation is open to the 17th of July. Well, I've been to no public meeting. Have you been invited to any public meeting to discuss this? You know, this should be another one of those open public debates where the people of New Zealand can actually have their say. So the final report goes to the government in November this year after the general election. So obviously, one newspaper says, look, it will be accepted into this year's general election, and this one says it's after the general election. So here you have it. More non-transparency, different reporting. So we don't really know what's happening. It's all about confusing the public. So how much clout do the people have as far as referendums? Well, if it's a government referendum, it's government-initiated referendum, that can be either non-binding or binding. So binding on them actually carrying through what the people want, or non-binding, where they actually choose, the government themselves choose what they choose to do. But if this was a citizens-initiated referendum for this particular around the electoral laws, and we said, look, we feel, the public feel, that age 16 is too low to keep it at age 18. Now, if we were to call a citizens-initiated referendum, that would be non-binding, meaning we do not have the end decision-making rights. The government still has. Even if you had 2/3 of New Zealand, the voting, electoral votes, voting people of New Zealand saying, look, no, we don't want 16-year-olds voting, the government is still the end decision maker, and they can say, no, we've decided this is what we're going to do, and blow you lot. We're going to do what we want, not what you want. It's not about the people. So the government, with those last two referendums on 16-year-olds, over 2/3, the voting public said, no, we don't want it. Parliament could just have the referendum pass on the amendment, an amendment to the Electoral Act. So they could just amend the Electoral Act just like that, so simply. Public would have no say. I do not believe the public has a say, quite frankly. So David Seymour, he's quickly rubbished this whole electoral review and said it's a waste of time and a major left-wing beat-up and does not solve a single problem that New Zealanders face. Well, I have to agree with that. The review in question recommended eliminating the coattailing rule, allowing a party that wins at least one electoral seat to bring more MPs into the House, even if the party vote is below 5% threshold. ACT, for instance, in 2008 received just 3.65% of the party vote, but took 5 seats in the House when they won the Epsom electorate. So the eligible electoral voting public of New Zealand are not taken into consideration at all, and it's all about the famous left-wing Build Back New Zealand, Build Back the World, and it's all about the left biases. Build Back Better Budget of Grant Robertson's with the New Zealand happiness indicators, the bullshit to hide the GDP, which was replaced with the happiness indicators. Here we have a totally non-transparent government. They will do what they will do because they want to do it, because they are not taking the public of New Zealand into consideration. Just a minor number of the public. Certain iwi, not all, Maori, certain iwi and certain woke and certain universities and certain corporations, the 10 biggest companies in New Zealand, they're the ones that are getting the voices in there. So the eligible electoral voting public of New Zealand are not taken into consideration. So the 12th of November 2022, RNZ reported Jacinda Durham said that legislation will be drafted for making the vote of 16-year-olds possible. On the 6th of June 2023, RNZ reported the electoral review recommends that the voting age is lowered to 16, party threshold to 3.5%, and an independent panel of experts are considering public submissions on extended parliamentary term, increasing it from 3 years to 4 years and lowering the age of voting from 18 to 16. So there's been 58 public meetings. Did you get an invite to any of those? Because I didn't. So let's see, 58 public meetings have been reported and 1,700 submissions is now reported. And draft recommendations, they say to make electoral laws fairer. Fairer for who? The draft recommendations are: 1, lowering the voting age for general elections to 16, extending overseas voting rules, extending them, extending the voting rights to all prisoners. It wouldn't matter if they were in there for murder for 13 years. It doesn't matter. All prisoners get to say how this country is run. So holding a referendum and extending the parliamentary term, as I say, lowering the party vote threshold and the coat and tail rule, restricting political donations to registered voters rather than organisations. We're talking about registered voters, the electoral public, rather than the organisation, capping them at $30,000 to each party and its candidates per electoral cycle, whilst reducing the amount that can be anonymously donated, and rewriting the Electoral Act to modernise its language. A lot of modernising of language going on. Requiring the Electoral Commission to give effect to the Treaty of Waitangi. Why? Why? Treaty of Waitangi 1840 didn't mention this. The panel chairperson is Deborah Hart. The Independent Electoral Review was established by the Minister of Justice Andrew Little, and Deborah Hart is a highly experienced director, CEO, and lawyer. The other members of the panel are Maori academic, political commentator Dr. Maria Barr, electoral law expert Professor Andrew Giddis, law student Alice Mander, and former Chief Electoral Roll Officer Robert Peden, lecturer and New Zealand election study co-leader Dr. Lara Greaves. They are non-elected bodies determining how our electoral system will be run. Non-elected. You did not elect these people to do this. So Whawhai also announced in the House that consultation included other groups such as Maori organisations, youth organisations, universities, and New Zealand Law Society. Okay, so the people of New Zealand, the general public of New Zealand, were not involved. And Whawhai called this a broad public consultation with the people of New Zealand. 4.5 million people, plus he didn't consult. So lowering the voting age of 16 should cause many voters a problem, and they should be concerned. How young is too young? Green Party are definitely for it, as is Labour. Labour didn't want to put their signature to it. So then what they did instead was called a review panel to let them off the hook to make the decision. So just because 16-year-olds can have sex under 16, they can take puberty blockers under 16 at any age, they can obtain a driver's license at 16, they're encouraged to watch porno in schools under 16, they can talk about their sexual desires under 16 in the school classroom openly. But what real experience do they have in life? Are they still living with their parents? Do they know what it's like to bring up a family? Do they know what it's like to go to work? Do they really know what it's like when elderly people are struggling, the vulnerable have no home, are living in caravans and sheds and sleeping on the street? Do they really know? At 16, they're busy with their lives, with their friends, and thinking about exams. They should not have those worries on their shoulders. That's not the time for them to have those worries on their shoulders. Some professional medical experts say that their brains haven't even grown neurologically until they are over 25. So the cognitive age doesn't match the neurological age, and that's what they say. So, do they realize how this age thing will affect us all? No. Do they really care? Should they really be involved in this? I don't believe so. So young people, students are the political football. If you see what's going on in our schools, they are the political football. It's not about education, it's about ideology. So they talk about students requiring digital licenses to protect them from online dangers. And the more political stuff, the ideology. The government is the only source of truth, they're led to believe. They're indoctrinated and they're manipulated to believe that the government is the only source of truth. And here's your voters, believing the government is the only source of truth, taking with them what they're learning in school right now, this wokeness. So determining where our country is heading. So those, and I'm not saying all students, because some students will not go down that road. But the point is we must take these things into consideration. So why change things? So you have to go, why change things? What's going on here? You must question it. So those that are taught in school to be good global citizens. Now, I've seen this in documentation. They're being taught to be good global citizens, not good New Zealand citizens. It's about good global citizens, just like the global shapers of the WEF. So is it they want another New Zealand's own global shapers voting? So we have to see the dangers and the manipulation and the brainwashing that's gone along here, where already in schools, young people are being taught how to vote and having role playing and voting under this education system that is biased, is left wing, is Marxist, holds critical theory, critical race theory, and young people are voting on that premise of what they've been indoctrinated into. Thus, to take it into the big worldwide world of voting. And this is what's happening. So New Zealand government, Build Back Better. Klaus Schwab, Global Redesign Initiative. That's UN Agenda 2030. Targeting, rebuilding institutions, education, the global governance, the action campaign for education for all the world's children. Reported June the 21st, 2010, Global Education Monitoring Report for 2020, Choice for Children and Inclusion. Instead of lowering the voting age of 16, shouldn't the government seriously be looking at the significant increase in youth crime? 2 teenagers. There's a guy sitting in a car. He's 30 years old. 2 teenagers go over and they slit his throat while people watched on. This is what's happening in our country. Those people were watching on, horrified, some crying. They couldn't help this guy. There was blood everywhere. That was in Beach Haven, Auckland, only recently. And that's not a one-off. So all the ram raids, Scoop New Zealand reported, 20th of March 2023, Labour lacks leadership, crime rate surge. More New Zealanders are victims of crime, said police spokesman Mark Mitchell. Victimisation increased from 2017 at 241,000 people to 2022, which is over 350,000 victims, a 46% increase. Serious assaults causing injury skyrocketing, 9,800 in 2017 to 23,000 in 2021, a 140% increase. Ram raids, 886 in 2022. 1 every 10 hours, 551% increase. And what has Labour done? They've decreased the prison sentence, the prison population by 30%, repealed the 3 strikes law designed to deter repeat offenders. How has that helped? As the country had its 4th police minister in just 12 months. 4 police ministers, changes of police ministers in 12 months. Labour Greens support the lowering of the age of voting. National oppose it. Winston Peters says that it'll lead to instability. And he said, have you seen the criminal court lately? And Everson suggests young brains are still undergoing development into a person's 20s, not fully mature till they're 25, not 18 years old, as it would imply. Neurological development is not directly proportionate to cognitive integrity or maturity. This is very complicated, but what will come next? What they're going to say, okay, you're over 70 now, you're an old fart, you can't vote anymore. But us old farts have a lot to give. I mean, we've had life's experiences. They could be the good, the bad, and the ugly. And a lot of us have been through that and got through it. And we've seen many situations. So, yeah. So perhaps they could get rid of the woke vote and give it to the old folk. And we could have theirs and ours. I think that would be a really good idea. So then we've got, the young people, 16, are still hanging on to their parents' coattails, aren't they? So they're not out in the world. They might have part-time jobs, but they don't know what it's like to struggle. Even so, they don't know what it's like where can they really take it on board what is actually happening out in that world there, because they've already been indoctrinated to think otherwise. So this is not a put down for the young people. It's about caring about the young people, because should they have that on their shoulders, why should they not just be young teenagers finding their way in life for the short term they have? It's like children. We shouldn't be robbing them of their innocence. We should cherish it that these 16-year-olds are still discovering what it's like to be a 16-year-old. Should we be putting the weight on our country onto their shoulders? So that's another way of looking at it. It's a caring way. So, I just believe this is not about the people of New Zealand. This is more about a leftist plan. And we need to wake up to this. This electoral law changing, the review. Now we don't even know whether it's going to be applied to this year's elections or after this year's elections, because there's so many publications of news media going on. One said it's this year with the elections, and one says no, it's November. So how do you believe anything? As I say, non-transparent. And they don't really care about the people anyway. It's about their self-satisfaction. It's about what they want, not what the people want. Time to drain the swamp, people. Wake up, New Zealand.